Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Draenora. Rather interesting one in comparison to the rest that we've done over these past few months. A rather personal episode, wouldn't you agree? I am joined by a familiar figure that we did not see much of this season, and as a result of that, this episode is meant to be more of a catch-up about what's been happening with everybody's favorite halfling. So, Kalos, life has been strange for you. Stranger in the fact that it had been a few days before you had met the fated group of individuals that would change your life forever. The members of the people that you now call your friends, before leading to your, well, death. Way back in Eleanor, when you had first received these sorts of visions, these communions with this figure, which you do not know the name of currently, only referred to as the gentleman or the man of black antlers. You had been visited in your past very few times, one while you were unconscious and one in your dreams, as well as seeing nightmarish visions in broad daylight after being approached by specific individuals in robes made of purple linens and cloths, sporting a golden maple leaf. This is rather troubling to you, in the beginning at least, until eventually you made your way to Castle Eleanor in order to give the information that this individual had been seeking. Some time passes, and eventually you come to a sort of agreement with this fellow. He offered you a chance, a place that would mean nothing immediately but something in the future. And you took the offer, and as a result you were branded with the mark of this individual, expecting some sort of golden maple leaf, assuming that they were tied together in these strange occurrences that you had laid witness to. Instead, you were marked on your right collarbone with the mark of the faint outlines of a blackened rose, almost an oil slick black. Shortly after making this arrangement and becoming somewhat on the same side as the warlock herself, Lenara, you were approached and found by those same familiar figures: Luvash, Cornelius, Sterark, Emery. Yet this time they were joined by another individual. They were joined by an elven humanoid, an elven figure, who you had seen before slightly in Linara's sort of questioning / experimentation room, who was with them. After a battle ensued and your demise was brought to you by the hands of the people you were beginning to trust, you felt your consciousness ripped away from your body. But immediately afterwards, you were drawn to a space. You were drawn to a space that felt small, but not in the physical sense. In the physical sense, it felt infinite and expansive. But from a very small window, you could see what was happening in the world of the living. Or rather, in whatever world that you had just been ejected from. In this space, you saw a couple of things. You saw the gentleman rise out from the pool and make his way over to Sterark, who was clutching the tattered remains of your body. A deal was struck between them, and you felt the space you were in sort of shift and compress. And you could see from a first-person perspective whenever you so desired to look into this window, using your mind's eye. The perspective of what was almost the size of the pit of a mango, a very large seed that was given to Sterark with the intention to be placed in a pool similar to the one that you had entered in before to meet with the gentleman, but yet somewhere to the east in the Ebonwood. And thus our journey began. The journey to revive Kalos, to bring him back. Travel ensued immediately afterwards, making no stop, with extreme haste to get to the east as quickly as possible. Stopping only once in the city of Odil, you watched from essentially what was a glass box. You wanted to speak, yet when you did, it fell upon deaf ears that could not hear you. But all you could do was watch. Yet, when you would speak, you were answered by a voice. A voice that was unfamiliar to you, and one that you can barely comprehend. The voice comes to you, and it sounds like thousands of voices whispering in unison, different words, but the sounds of these words make up something in common. Something that you can, just on the cusp of your ability to comprehend reality, you are able to make out as words. And as it speaks to you, it conveys to you this knowledge. The knowledge of your happenstance. And it offers you a cryptic message. It tells you that you are a key to a lock placed upon a prison a very, very, very long time ago. And you never hear from the voice again. And almost as soon as you have heard the voice, it's gone. And as you try to recall everything else that it said to you, it said more than this cryptic message. It said so many things. But every time you try and remember what it was, you get nothing but this deafening sort of ringing, almost like the sound after a flashbang. This almost deafened single high-pitched note in place of whatever memory and whatever comprehension you would have had of this voices, or the voices, and what they were saying. So, you find yourself in this space, standing on what appears to be nothing. You can see no bottom, you can see no top, you see nothing around you until you focus on seeing the outside. And that is when you can see through your glass box. Otherwise, there is absolutely nothing around you, but it's not the same as trying to look at the inside of your eyelids, sort of trying to see with your eyes closed. It just is nothingness. You don't know how much time there is, if time passes in this space. Go ahead and make a general intelligence check.
Okay. That is a 14.
You've never been a bookworm. You've never been one for reading in general. You don't actively seek knowledge of the arcane nature, but in your past, with the people that you've worked with, you have heard them, few of them, on the more magically inclined side, speak of spaces that exist between the planes of existence, and spaces that exist between that space. See, between the space of the planes of existence is something called the astral sea, but there are even smaller spaces that can exist within and between the cracks of the space that is the astral sea, and these are referred to as pocket dimensions. Usually they are created or summoned by people of great power, and are not really meant to sustain life unless they are shaped to do so. And that is all the knowledge that you can recall about what your predicament might be.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to speak again. So, am I just currently here, from what I know, alone in this prison? And is it a glass box? And if I try to say anything, no one hears it? Right?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
If you try to say something to your companions, it seems they cannot hear you. There is the essence of nothingness. Imagine standing in a room with no light, with your eyes open. It's the same as trying to look with your eyes closed. It is just the infinite expanse of nothing. And you are solitary. There's nothing else, no entity, no being with you. Though there is still some sort of physicality, because you can stand, and should you desire to, you can sit, and it seems that there is a physical surface beneath you that you can sit upon. But something is even more strange. Days, weeks pass by, and you feel no fatigue. You feel no hunger. You never tire of standing to the point where you would need to sit. You never hunger for food. In fact, a lot of the times you realize that you're not even breathing.
Oh.
This sort of subconscious necessity to breathe, you've caught yourself time and time again going long expanses without filling your lungs with air.
Okay. I know this might sound a little trivial, but I'm gonna see how far exactly my reach spans. Like, how much space do I have in this glass box?
So you just begin to walk in a direction.
I'll just walk forward.
And you begin to walk. Now, I have a question for you. How often do you focus on seeing the outside? Because you have to actively sit and concentrate in order to see on the outside.
Well, I'm guessing because it's hard to tell time in this place. I suppose every maybe, like, from what I would think, like 300 feet maybe. Like, again, that would be like for Kalos, like estimating, kinda.
Well, you can physically count.
Yeah, no, and that's probably what I do, is just count, and then when I think it's around 300 feet, then look around. Just kind of pace myself a little.
Look around your space or focus on seeing the outside?
Outside, yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, see the outside.
And with that, you begin to walk. In whatever space you see is just directly in front of you, you have no sense of direction because there's nothing for you to get a basis off of. You begin to walk. And with each step, you find your feet making footfalls with whatever is solid beneath you. And you never stop. You only stop to take a glance at the outside every so often. But you continue to walk for a week. And you never find an end. Nothing changes in your surroundings. What's next?
Oh, sorry, my mistake. I was like talking for that whole time. If I were to look out, what would I see after that week passed?
You would see, you would see Odil. You'd see a city that you've never been in before. Well, you wouldn't see it, because whenever you look out a majority of the time, it's just the inside of a pouch. You see the inside of a sack. A burlap sort of pouch that Sterak holds on his waist. But you do hear things. You do have sight and you do have hearing when you focus through the senses of this object. And you hear the sounds of arrival, the sounds of a town, the sounds of people living and going about their day. And eventually you find yourself surrounded in, well, still the same pouch, but you hear from beyond the pouch almost sort of this muffled sound of celebration, music, and the sounds of life and livelihood. What you can only assume to be the inside of a tavern or an inn or a bar, as people are constantly shouting for food and drink. And that's what you get. You hear music.
Well, you know what? Okay, so you said it feels like I'm, stepping on something, because, my feet are being caught whenever I walk.
Yes.
Firstly, I'd like to kind of look down at it, and of course, I guess I'll see nothing.
It's the same as looking up or looking to the left or to the right.
I'm gonna try to feel it. Like, I'm gonna try to lean down and put my hand on it. Just because I'm interested now.
As you press your hand against it, you feel ground. Not the same type of earth, like dirt or mud, but just you feel something. Something hard that resembles just a flat surface wherever your hand meets it. You're not sure if you're walking on some sort of thin sheet, or if a ground is being apparated beneath you wherever you touch it. You're not sure quite what or why there is ground beneath you.
Okay. Now, like, do I remember anything from, like, when I died? Like, is there a way, like, or do I, like, how much do I know about my kind of circumstances right now? Because right now I think I'm just alone. And I'm just kind of waiting.
In what way?
Like, is there anything I can do to, like, not to converse with them, but, like, is there anything I can exactly do other than wait in here, or?
You're unsure. Immediately after you felt death wash over you, either at the hands of Luvash's arrows or Emery's magic, you only remember immediately after the sort of edges of your vision beginning to fade to black. There was immediately after that sort of initial fading, you found yourself in this space.
And the only time I've been directly contacted was that voice at the beginning.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to see if I can get a response from that voice, because that's the only contact I've really had this whole time, to kind of get surroundings a little. So I'm just gonna look up, or my perception of up, and I'm just gonna simply say, "Hello, anybody here? No. I kind of need answers here." Just kind of looking around my blank space, kind of confused. Do I get any response at all?
You speak, and you wait, and you don't get a response from the voices that you heard before. But as you begin to focus on this feeling of trying to connect with something, trying to make communication, you just think about the voices, and you try and remember what they were like. And as you do so, and as you focus on this singular feeling of either isolation or this very powerful desire for contact with something after such time has passed in your isolation, you look back down and you see a mirror image of yourself.
Oh.
Almost as if a sheet of glass had been apparated in front of you. You see a mirror image of yourself that mimics you in every move.
Okay.
You're not sure how it apparated into existence or how it arrived in this space, since you were looking up, and as you look back down, it just seems to be there, almost as if it had always been there.
Well, yeah, I'm just gonna look around and I'm just gonna say, well, thank you but I don't really know the answers myself, so I can't particularly.
Every time you speak, every time you move your head to look at something that isn't there, it mimics you.
Oh.
And it moves its lips, but it doesn't speak. No sound comes out, but it's copying you exactly.
Okay. Huh. So it's just like. Also, does this mirror have any like dimensions, or is it just like?
It is not a mirror. It is a physical apparition of your body in your mirror
Oh.
image.
It's just like a clone. Okay.
Or rather, I say physical, but I mean in the sense that you can see it.
Yeah.
It is something in the nothingness.
Huh. I'm actually gonna walk towards it.
And you do so until you decide to stop.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, do I make ground?
You
Like,
could be nose to nose. It's wherever you want to stop.
I'll stop in front of it and I'll try to like touch it. Like, I'll try to put my arm out and kind of like say like touch the chest, I guess.
Well, as you do so, your fingers will meet first since it mimics you exactly.
Yeah. So it'll put its arm
And
out.
it feels cold. But it has a sort of physicality to it, but not the same as if touching human skin. It doesn't have the same feel, the same texture. Instead, it feels almost like a solidified gel.
Yeah.
And it has this sort of thin film of liquid anywhere you touch. And it is cold.
Well, I'm just gonna stop focusing on it for a little, and I'm just gonna say again. Okay, look, I know that you wanted to help and everything, whoever those voices belong to, but this doesn't really answer any of my questions, and I would like some of this to be cleared up. A little aggravated now.
You get no response again, and the figure's still there, still mimicking you, still doing everything that you do. In a perfect mirror.
Huh. Well, odd. Okay, I guess I'm just gonna focus on what's going on outside of my plane of my prison, per se, right now. What do I see?
You just hear voices.
Still.
Not much time has passed. In fact, you hear the sounds of Sterak sleeping.
Oh. Okay. Well, I mean, can I take the option just to wait right now? Because I don't really know if I don't get any response from speech, and this thing will just copy me all this time. Can I just wait to see if anything happens? For like, I don't exactly know how long. Yeah. Can I just wait until something happens?
And you do so.
Okay.
And nothing does.
Oh.
You don't know how much time has passed. It feels like a long time. Nothing ever happens. Go ahead and make a general intelligence check for me again.
Okay. That is a natural 20. 21.
Well then, that helps you a lot because you have a lot of time to reflect. And the only thing that is in this space with you is your perfect image, your perfect copy, your mirror. And it's puzzling. how it's there, why it got there, and how it got there. It's enough for you to think about it. And as you begin to think about it, you replay the events that you believe brought it into existence. The focusing on that specific feeling, that connection that you wanted, that intense desire for something. And then it happened.
Alright. You know what? With that being said, I'm going to think up... I'm going to see if I can't mimic what I was feeling at that point. And I'm going to try to think up, say, the gentleman. Because that was the last person... Or that's the person who I believe would have the most to tell me about my current situation.
So, you begin to experiment. You're not entirely sure how this works. So, in the beginning, you try to think of the gentleman. And as time passes, you recall the sound of his voice. You focus on what he looked like. And as you do so, you concentrate, and even though there isn't really that sensation of closing your eyes, you do so to just perfectly focus on the image of this entity. And as you open your eyes, there is an image of a man that looks exactly like the gentleman as you recall him. And it stares at you blankly.
I'm going to move... I'm going to wave and see if it mimics it.
It doesn't. It just stands there.
Okay.
It does not move. It is absolutely still.
And it doesn't, like, say anything? Nothing?
You stare at it, and it stares at you.
Okay. Well, then I'm just going... I'll see if I can trigger a reaction, just because it's not me, for a change. And I'm just going to say... Well, can you answer my questions, maybe? I say, kind of curiously.
You hear your voice repeat back to you exactly.
Ah.
Yet, the gentleman's lips do not move. He doesn't have lips. It's just the shadows that enrapture where a head would be. And sound just seems to emanate from where a mouth should be.
Okay.
And it sounds exactly like you.
Ugh.
It's actually quite unsettling.
Yeah, I'd imagine. You know what? Okay, so I've been focusing mainly on imagery. So I'm gonna focus on what that voice sounded like from what I remember it saying. The voice at the very beginning of my imprisonment here, like the whispers.
Every time you try and recall anything other than it saying that you were a key to a prison made long ago, it just sounds like that high-pitched squeal.
You know what? So I've gotten people to appear. I'm going to try to think about a place. I'm going to try to think about where I was when I died. And just kind of imagine being in the place to see if it doesn't appear.
And you do so. I'm so glad you actually thought of this.
Haha.
Because as you do so, what moment specifically do you think of? Because with your understanding through your experiments, because you got a natural 20, you can tell that when you conjure these things, you have to have a point of reference. A singular point in time.
I'm going to think of the last thing I can remember before I died. Or my last vision before I died of that area.
And as you do so, you see it through your eyes. Or rather, you see a vision. It's going to be a little difficult to describe this. Imagine seeing a setting through the camera angle of where your eyes would be in front of you. Does that make sense? Almost like looking at a screen on a television, and your eyes is the camera.
It's like a point of view kind of perspective.
Yes. But it exists as a physical space in front of you that you can walk inside of.
Oh.
And the last thing you see is Sterark holding you and looking up at the gentleman. And you can see a little bit of Cornelius over his shoulder. You can see a little bit of Emery, just his arm on the side, kind of existing in the cutoff of where your peripheral vision could see his arm. And you just see floating in space there his arm and the small portion of Cornelius's head and the front half of Sterark's body and the front half of the gentleman's body. And you see the open sky above you, but only in this sliver of the perspective that you saw it in before you died.
Then, I guess, to get a little bit more information, I'm gonna back it up a little bit. Just say, like...
And just for your information, anytime you try and touch any of these things, it has that same feeling as touching the copy of you.
Yeah. Okay.
That same physical, almost gel-like substance with the thin film of liquid.
I'm gonna go back to what I remember the room where I talked to the gentleman was. Like, at the bottom of the pool.
And you focus on that, and as you do so, everything that you're conjuring into existence stays where it is. It does not disappear. You can still see the copy of you follows you everywhere you go.
Oh.
He's always in front of you.
Huh.
The gentleman is standing in the exact same spot that you conjured him in. But now, as you're creating these things, you have points of reference. You see physical space in its expanse. As you create them, you can see there's a distance that you can determine between the gentleman and the vision of the last moments of your life, and the space that physically exists between the physical things that you've created. And as you focus on this moment in time, you conjure the room from your perspective, the still image of the fireplace, almost like making a photograph real. You see the cinders coming off of the fireplace, and they're suspended in air, frozen. You see the figure of the gentleman sitting almost cross-legged, well, not cross-legged, one leg over the other, in a very regal manner, with a hand up to where a chin should be. And you see this almost den-like area, but it is cut off in specific places where your vision did not see, such as behind you, to directly, immediately to your left, and immediately to your right. Only the cone of vision that you had.
So it's like looking into like a diorama. You can only see so much.
Exactly. And then anything past that it runs off. There's no existence. Like, as you go behind the fireplace, There's the back. There is no back of the fireplace. It's almost just nothingness. It only exists when you're on the side of it that you can see it.
Okay. Alright, well, with that said, what do I, like, what are my current surroundings outside of my dimensional plane? Like, my outside of the glass box.
You hear the sounds of travel.
Okay, still in a bag?
This time, you hear a new voice, though.
Uh,
The voice sounds kind of like this. And he talks about elves a lot. Says mean things about elves. You don't recognize this voice. You don't know who it could be. But this voice stays until eventually you hear that the voice belongs to a man named Nervek. You don't know where he came from. Maybe from Odil. That was the last city you were in. You don't know why he's with them. You didn't hear that part. You didn't focus on it when it happened.
well... You know what, I'm going to... That's tough. I'm gonna continue thinking of people.
Alright.
And each time I create a person, I'm gonna go through the same thing I did with the gentleman figure. You know, I'll just say, hello? Can you respond or anything? And after that, I'm going to look to the outside, because I want to check in more regularly now that I'm hearing this new voice.
Okay.
So, firstly, I guess I will imagine the second most likely person who'd have an explanation is Draenora, I guess.
And you conjure her into existence. No response.
Okay. Then, you know what? I haven't tried for a little test thing. I'm gonna see. So I'm going to imagine a stair arc, I guess.
And you do so.
Okay. And I'm just gonna go through the same stuff. No response. Nothing.
No response.
Okay.
Now, one thing that I should point out is that they always stare ahead. They never look directly at you. The only thing that does that is your copy that follows you everywhere and is always in front of you.
And it's like a default model. Until you do anything with it, it's just there.
It's almost more like a mannequin, actually.
Ugh. Okay. So it's like unblinking, nothing.
Unblinking, unmoving.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to... you know what? I'm going to focus on outside right now. Outside the prison. Now that I know the whole, if you imagine it, it'll happen kind of thing. Kind of dealio.
More sounds of travel.
I'm just gonna wait and see if I see anything.
You're just going to spend a long time focusing on the outside?
Yeah, because I can't get a response from the things that I do here. I'm gonna spend time observing what's going on with my outside.
Alright.
Outside self.
And how many days do you want to focus on that stuff going out there?
Well, I guess just until something out of the ordinary happens, or I hear something out of the ordinary.
Alright. is nothing for a good amount of time. It just sounds like the sounds of travel, the sounds of light conversation, until eventually you're taken out of the burlap sack. And you see your surroundings. It's nighttime on a campfire. And Sterark has taken you out to look at you. And you can see him. And he seems distraught. He seems haggard, tired, probably from the days traveling. And he sort of is just taking his watch. He doesn't take you out often. Or if he has in the past, you just weren't focusing on it when he did. And you see your surroundings. You see the plains. The great open plains. And as he continues to look around, all you see is his face as he's holding you in his palm. And he just continues to walk, probably taking watch. And that's all. He continues to do so until the watch is over. You hear the sounds of nighttime, crickets in the grass. Until eventually his watch is over and he puts you back. Do you continue to focus?
I will. Yeah, I'll check back in a little bit, I guess. So then next, now that it's been a little while that I've tried, I'm going to just say to nobody in particular, well, this is all really, cool that I can make this stuff appear, but, again, it doesn't really answer any questions, and I know there's someone that can contact me. I don't know why you've left me alone here. And like I said before, however long ago it was, I'd like to know some answers. Just kind of up. Nothing? Am I met with silence?
You don't get anything. Make another intelligence check for me.
Okay.
These are sorts of my ways of nudging you in the right direction.
No, well, not gonna get it that way. 3.
3?
Mm-hmm.
You think long and hard about the ways that you've interacted with the things you've created. And so far you have only focused on their physical imagery of the things that you've created.
Okay. With that in mind, I'm going to... So I created Sterark into existence here.
Yes, and he's standing right next to Lenara.
I am going to try to think about, like, how he was kind of as a person, what he would do in this kind of situation. And I'm going to think about, like, what he sounded like, how he thought through things from what I've seen, the kind of person he was, to see if I can could think up a livelier, per se, image. Just try to think about everything that I know about Starark, just nice, long, and hard. Like I'm thinking up a person.
As you do that, you focus on the abstract portions of what makes Sterak himself. And after you finish focusing, the physical Sterak that you've created does nothing. Instead, you get a small, almost ball. And it kind of just is existing in this space at about chest level with you. And in this space, as you look inside of this ball, you see every single memory as they've played out that you've been with Sterak, and it continues to play on loop.
Okay, so it's just like watching a film in a little orb.
Yes.
All right. Well. I'm going to do the same, but with the gentleman, and I'm gonna just think about what he's said in the past, because, like I said, that seems to be the person who would know the most about what's going on, as he was the last person other than my party that was there when I died, and told them to, or well, I guess I wasn't there for that, but the last person that wasn't my party, I guess, that was there.
And you create another sphere of memories.
Okay. And I'm just gonna... I'm just gonna watch through it. Is it, like, silent? Or is it just, like a movie today?
It's almost like a movie today. Because as you look at it and you focus on it, you can hear their voices. You can hear his voice. But what's the most strange is that you can hear your own voice. As a spectator. And another thing that I should point out is that in these memory reels, it's still from your perspective.
Yeah.
In case that was not clear.
Yeah, from how I saw it. Okay.
So you just begin to watch it? Are you looking for anything specific?
I'll look for if there was any way that I could somehow communicate with him, because I'm gonna start looking for ways to communicate again.
Okay. Make an investigation check with advantage.
Okay.
And then add 10 to it, because you have you can see it. And you can watch it again and again and again and again as many times as you need to.
Alright, that's a natural 20. That is a 35 with the plus 10.
Alright. And you begin to watch until eventually you watch this moment, the moment that you had been conversing with the gentleman in that space in the pool. And you watched as easily as he moved his hands, he was ripping and tearing apart the reality around you and conjuring things in moments instantly. And as you begin to look at it, you see the cryptic scene of all the people sort of standing sort of with almost being held from the back of their collars, kind of suspended, all of the people that have come before Buckwild and has served this individual. You see that cryptic scene once again, but you push past it. You continue to watch and you try and glean as much information from this as you can. And you have an epiphany.
Okay.
And you realize that the space that you were in before with him is a space that is very, very similar in its reality to the one that you're in. And thus you begin to watch his movements, you begin to study this, until eventually you realize something. That in that space, because you got a natural 20, in that space, he was the master of it. And then it hits you. You are the master of this space. And as you realize that, you hear the many voices again. And you hear it speaking to you, filling your mind with knowledge. And as soon as it came, it goes. And you can't remember it.
Oh, come on.
Something about this entity is strange, extremely so, and you don't know why. You don't know what it means. And you don't know what this knowledge in your head is, because whenever you try and think about it, you don't get anything. But then you realize what you can do. You create a memory reel of the voices. And you watch it back. Again and again and again and again. Anytime you need to remember what was said to you, you can just listen to it again by focusing on it in this orb. And the knowledge that it gives to you the second time around, or rather, I'll allow you to choose. Would you like the first time that you couldn't remember, or the second time?
I suppose I will think up the first.
This is very important, so pay attention.
Okay.
The sleeping light rests within the mortal coil of man. He is not who he believes he is. His memories, fleeting like sand. In the time that is to come, inevitable fate of man, there is a moment that he will realize what is possible and what he can. Another very cryptic message.
And I guess I'll take the second one, then.
The second one. Thousands and thousands of millennia past, the prison I watch, like that of glass. From beyond the realm, I do see into the hearts of man and woman. From 1,000 eyes, I see existence. And from 1,000 minds, I am one. Another cryptic message. But as you analyze this, you have another epiphany. And because you got a natural 20, you realize that this entity obviously has to exist outside of your space. And as you interpret what it's saying, that it's somehow watching from its own glass box, you realize that there is a way to at least momentarily link these places together. You're not sure how, but you realize it's a possibility. And that thought drives you with inspiration. It's your move.
Alright. Now, it says that he watches, which means that he does.
I apologize. It's not supposed to be a he. I meant to say, every time that I said he, it just was easier for me to say. It's supposed to be it.
Yeah. It, yeah. Okay, so it watches. Okay. I'm gonna try asking a more specific question. Because before, I was just saying things like I'd like some answers. I'm going to, and as this thing seems very powerful in its knowledge, I'm going to just do as I did before, just like asking into the nothingness.
Well, it's not quite nothingness anymore.
Well,
You're surrounded
yes.
by your creations.
Yes, by the things that I have made, but not speaking to any of those per se. I'm just gonna ask a simple question. First thing that comes to mind: why aren't I dead? Why am I here? Just to see if I get an answer.
And you do not.
What?
Make an intelligence check.
Ah, my real life intelligence checks are all net ones. That is a 13.
You've realized that every time you have spoken, you've gotten nothing. Everything that you've gotten has been from your own will. And by this point, you realize that speaking does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that you realize is that you make the connection that focusing on specific things makes them appear, and focusing on abstract things creates something physical with which you can observe them. So instead, you think on something even more abstract. You think about that same connection. Now, so far, you have realized that there are two spaces of existence that you believe are similar to your own. That is that of wherever the many voices are, and that you were within the pool with the gentleman. And that from analyzing the knowledge of the voices speaking to you, that there is some way to manifest a connection between spaces.
Okay, I'm not going to think about what they said. I'm going to imagine just what the voices sounded like, I guess, and think about, yeah, I'm just gonna imagine what it sounded like while it was speaking.
It sounded like thousands of voices all saying different things. None of them were saying the things that you heard, and it was something incomprehensible. But from the sounds, your brain interpreted words. What you heard and what you interpreted were two completely separate things. And it makes no sense to you.
Now, is there a way that I can deeper analyze some of the cryptic messages that I heard? See if I can't pick something out? Pick something more out? See if I can't find a way to make a, steady connection, I guess you could say?
Make another intelligence check.
Okay.
With advantage because you have the resources around you.
Yeah.
You've created them.
That is a 19.
Alright. You focus on the many voices. And you continue to play back what they said over and over and over and over and over. And as you do so, you begin to focus on making some sort of connection, but this is so abstract that you're not sure how to go about it. So you take multiple steps. You try different things. Firstly, you try manifesting a hallway, something that leads one place to another, a gate. And all you do is physically manifest the gate of Eleanor Castle. And that doesn't do anything. And you get sort of upset about it, but you immediately move on and you think more abstractly, and you think about the ground beneath you, the physicality that you can stand on, and you focus on this path to a space that is not yours, and then you get something. You get a crack in the physical reality. Almost like a square sheet of glass appears in space. You can walk all around it. A crack forms. And you can feel it. And it doesn't feel like the rest of the things that you have manifested. It doesn't feel like this solidified gel. It feels like the ground beneath you, but broken.
Okay, well, since I have the knowledge that I control what goes on here, can I see if I can... So how big is this crack in this plane?
It's about the size of your hand. Small.
I'm gonna see if I can't imagine my way to make this bigger.
Well, there's two ways you can go about that. You can create another physicality of it, which is what you probably would do, or you can continue to focus on that feeling that originated it.
You know what, I'll go with the second one and see if it doesn't help the cause.
So as you begin to focus more on that abstractness of a path, an abstract path, it doesn't make sense in your mind at all. You don't... It's almost as if thinking about walking forwards, but you're actually stepping backwards. It's... Everything that is up is down. Nothing makes sense. And as you focus on that, there is a reaction. You continue to focus on the space between the spaces, and the crack spreads. Slowly at first, and the more you focus on it, more and more and more, until eventually a piece ceases to exist. The cracks form around a specific spot in this almost like wall that these cracks are forming upon, and it falls away, and as it falls, it doesn't shatter, it doesn't hit a ground, it just ceases to exist. And you see past it, and you see something that is disheartening at first. You see nothingness. As you sort of peek through this looking hole. And as you do, you hear something. You don't know what it was. There was no sound, but you heard something from within that space.
Well,
as you pressed up against it to see through there, and you felt it, you realized that you can physically push on these cracks, and they give way.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna be bold, and I'm gonna see if I can't get into one of these cracks. This is the only way.
You can. What I'm saying is, you can push on it, and it continues to break. It has physicality.
Okay. Then yeah, I'm just gonna see if I can't, keep breaking this.
So you begin to push on it, and it's physical. It's this manifest, and the more you begin to push on it, the more force that you put towards it, it begins to give way until eventually a jagged and sharp-edged outline of some sort of entrance into whatever space exists beyond your own is in front of you.
Well, I'm gonna go through it, I guess, see what's in there. In this entrance.
You take a step through, and you fall. There is no ground. And you fall, and you fall, and you fall, and you plummet. You plummet, and you try and focus on the outside, and you can't create that connection anymore. You try and focus on things to make them apparate and appear, but you cannot do so anymore. And it's at that moment that you realize you're no longer in the space that you are the master of. You exist in somewhere else. And all you can feel in this nothingness is the sensation of falling.
Okay, so you said I can't make anything appear. As is. So I'm not going to try to make anything appear, per se, but I'm going to see if I can stop the feeling of falling. Make something solid under myself.
No. You cannot exert your will in this space.
Okay. And what about if I try to think about what the voice said before, or voices?
You can only remember the part about being a key. You cannot... Before, when you tried to recall it, all you did was watch what they said again. You are still incapable of remembering. You just had to hear it again and again and again and again every time you wanted to look back at it, but now you do not have that resource available to you.
Well, then I'm gonna, for now, keep falling and just kind of take in surroundings of anything. If anything changes.
You don't know how much time passes, but it feels like a long time and nothing does.
And I don't hear anything again?
You just hear the sounds of wind rushing past you. That gives you that sensation of falling.
Yeah.
And then you see something. Delta remembers this creature as the creature that killed Achilles.
Oh, no.
Kalos does not know what this is.
Oh.
A creature with leathery blue skin, wings, and arms flies in this space, starting as a very small dot. And it's at that moment that you realize that you're not indeed falling, you are just suspended in space as it flies past you. Doesn't even give a second look at you.
Does it just fly by and just off in the distance?
It flies until the small dot disappears.
Huh. When it flies by, I'm just gonna try to get its attention. I'm just gonna shout, wave, if I can. Just, hey, hello? Hello? Nothing? No.
Nothing happens, no reaction.
Second look at first. Odd. Then You know, I'm just gonna wait till I see something else, because I know there are things here now. That's the thing.
And now with the realization that you are just suspended in space, you wait. And it feels like a very, very long time passes. And then another one. Coming from the same direction that the other one had left from.
Oh. So I'm suspended in air. Can I shift my position any? Like, to a point where I might be, like, upright?
You can move your arms, and you can move your legs, but you cannot do that, no. You're kind of just stuck, like, in the torso position of free falling.
I'm in, like, instead of a glass box, it's like a glass case perfectly around me, is what I'm kind of getting.
Sort of. Mostly just around your torso. You can move your arms and legs.
Yeah.
And your head.
Okay. So it's just like a lock of where my torso is positioned.
Yes.
Okay. Now how far away is this thing flying? From
10, 15 feet.
10. Okay. Well, huh. You know, I just thought about it. What do I have on me?
Your clothes.
Just, is that it?
Oh.
Okay. I'm gonna push down on my torso with my hands.
It does nothing.
Now, am I feeling my torso, or is there something blocking my hands and around my torso?
You can feel your torso, yeah.
Okay. So it's not like there's anything, like, physically around it.
No.
And you said I can't will anything into existence?
No.
Still?
You realize that you're in a space outside of the one that you were in before that was yours.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try to imagine how I imagined the gate before. Now I know I can't imagine anything up. But I'm going to imagine that kind of breaking. How I broke through my pocket dimension thing, my glass box. I'm going to imagine just that, but in this space.
And you focus on it. Nothing happens. The creature flies by again.
You know, it's like I really don't know what to do. So, I mean, like, I guess I just wait.
And you continue to wait. Until eventually the 12th time passes, and this creature stops. And it looks at you. Directly at you. Before, it just seemed as if you were not there to it. Never acknowledging your existence. But around the 12th time, it does. And it looks directly at you. Its jagged jawline and rough, leathery features. Its intimidating and powerful size. And it looks directly at you.
I'm gonna give it a little bit of a weary, hello? Hello? I'm gonna stick a hand up a little at it.
It doesn't react. And then it reaches out to touch you, and as it does, you see light, a sort of darkish purple blue color, erupt from your right collarbone.
Oh.
And as you do so, your physicality changes, and your perspective warps. and suddenly you're falling.
Like, actually falling.
Actually falling.
It's a different sensation.
And as you begin to look around, you see that you have blue skin. Leathery feel to it. You can feel your hands. And you feel something on your shoulder blades. And you look over and you see wings.
Ooh. I'm going to go the direction that I saw the first one go. If I can.
Alright. And you try and move your arms. You don't know how to move the wings until eventually, as you continue falling, the area around you begins to get different in a way. It begins to change, and you begin to see, slowly at first in the distance, what looks like cracked blue stone beginning to appear, and it's almost as if it's getting closer and closer and closer and closer, funneling down to a single point. You can continue to descend until eventually you learn that as you flex, you begin to feel for the muscles, for the wings, and you know how to move them, but you can continue to fall.
Okay, so this cracked blue. I'm gonna just keep going towards that.
Alright.
Funneling into the single point.
So you continue to fall. And as you begin to analyze these stone bluish walls, you see holes in them. And you see, the closer they get to you, more and more of these creatures. Until eventually, you hit something.
Oh.
And you don't know what it was. And you couldn't see it coming. But you die. You die from the impact. And when you open your eyes again, you're in your own space.
Oh.
And in the distance, you can see the broken window. It still exists. The broken space in your reality that leads to this other one. It's still there. But you exist as yourself once again in your space.
Now, you said this space is like the gentleman's. Yeah?
You believe it to be.
Yeah, from what I know. I'm gonna think differently about his possible space. And I'm gonna think about it now on this plane of things. And see, instead of creating a copy, like a physical copy, I'm gonna see if I can't go there.
So, in the same way that you created the first one, when you were focusing on whatever existence those voices you believed came from, you're gonna think about the gentleman's.
Yes, and think kind of in the middle between what it looked like and thinking about breaking through. So, in between thoughts, kind of like merging the thoughts of what it looked like and the thoughts of breaking through this plane, like making like a gate.
And you begin to do so. And you go through the same process, and for the sake of brevity, you push through. And this time, you see a very familiar space. and you hear the sounds of a crackling fire. And you see 2 empty chairs. A den area existing in a space of nothingness.
Okay. I'm gonna... I'll analyze the chair that I first sat in. Does it feel...
It feels very nice. It feels like very fine material. Soft to the touch.
Okay. Well...
Strangely enough, as you go towards the fire, you don't feel any warmth from it. Where in the past you did. It did feel like a warm, crackling fire, but you don't feel any warmth. Until eventually you hear something. And as you do so, you're sort of just running your fingers along one of the arms of the chair. You see a dwarf apparate into existence in front of you, almost as if he was dropped in from somewhere, and he's looking around, he's confused. And then you hear a very, very familiar voice. God, I don't remember his voice. It's been what? 3-4 months?
Maybe, yeah. Wait. Wait, familiar to me?
Yes.
Or familiar to Kalos?
To Kalos.
Okay.
It's the gentleman.
Oh.
I apologize, listeners. I'm just going to try and remember what his voice was.
Very gentleman-like.
Well, due to your curious pursuits, you have found yourself in my space, Moradin. And you look into the direction of the voice. I hope that was the right voice.
It sounded good.
And you see, sitting the same, looking exactly the same as he did before, the gentleman. But he's not looking at you, he's looking at this dwarf. And the dwarf says, Where am I? Well, Muradin, you see, when you said that you would give anything in order to, well, to put it simply, be able to win over your family or your clan, whatever you petty mortals call them, win over their favor and become their leader. I was listening, and I'm here to make you an offer. The dwarf looks scared. He looks confused. And looking forward... What? What are you saying? What can you give me? Who are you? I am but a gentleman. And I am about to become one of your closest friends. See, I can give you things like power, magic, followers, the tools that one would require to become a leader. And the dwarf looks forward, curious but cautious. And as this is going on, do you stand still? Do you move around? Do you try to speak? What do you do?
I'm going to, I'm gonna try to speak in the direction of the gentleman, and I'm just gonna say, "Excuse me? Can you hear me?"
Nothing happens.
Hmm. I'm going to attempt to touch his arm.
Your hand passes through it.
Hmm. Okay. Well, firstly, I want to see how much time has passed by looking out.
In this space, you cannot look out. And
Okay.
it's at that moment that you realize that you can only do so from yours.
Yeah, from mine. Now, what kind of a gateway have I made between these two spaces?
The same one that you did to the other place. A jagged, crooked, outlined hole. Almost as if somebody took a sledgehammer to a wall.
And just, yeah, punctured right through it. Well, I'm gonna, for now, think about... I'm just gonna keep thinking on this space, and, like, the very abstract kind of thought of the existence of this space and the person who I want to see in it.
Well, you realize that you are in this space now. Because there's this third person in the space with you that you've never met before, this dwarf. But there seems to just be this meeting, this conversation going on. And for the sake of brevity, and for my own sanity, I will not continue to talk to myself. Until eventually, the dwarf agrees. And you realize that this dwarf's aspirations is to become the leader of his clan and become very powerful. So, the gentleman grants him power, and a deal is struck. And the deal is that when the gentleman needs him and his people, that they will answer to his call. And until then, he would give him power when he asked.
Okay.
And then eventually, you watch as a tattoo very similar to your own appears as a vine of roses around his neck. The jagged thorns going all the way around, tattooed there on the dwarf's neck. And eventually, the gentleman waves his arm, and a door appears for the dwarf to walk through. And he opens the door. What do you do?
I'm gonna see if I can't go through the door with him.
As he makes his way through the door and as he opens it, you can see past it and you see what looks like the inside of some personal bed chambers in a room made of stone walls. And as you try and cross through the threshold, you feel a physical barrier. It feels... you can touch it in the space where the door frame is, where the entrance is. You can't physically pass through it. It feels like a wall, and you press against it, you slam against it. Those that are dead, Kalos, cannot return to the world of the living.
I'm gonna look back to the gentleman, and I'm gonna say, so you can hear me then?
And I can see you.
Well then, could you possibly answer my questions?
What questions do you have? And he moves his arm once again and the door disappears.
Well, firstly, as you said, I am of the dead. How am I in this sort of limbo state instead of just being completely dead.
That is by my will. But see, I have a question for you as well.
Okay.
How did you get here?
Well, it took me long enough, but, I had to think very abstractly about breaking through, like I was breaking through a wall, and thinking about your space and how it kind of seemed like mine. There's a voice that's kind of helping me, per se.
Kalos. This is troublesome to me. So, instead of simply obliterating your soul, I commend your curiosity, but I would appreciate it if you did not meddle in affairs that do not involve you. Do not enter my space again, but as a reward for your tenacity and curiosity, I will answer 3 of your questions before I banish you back to where you belong.
Well, firstly, can I, as I know it's not my place, can I make a request?
You cannot see any physical change in his face. He
Okay.
does not say anything.
Can I speak to one of the people who were in my shoes, per se? One of the people you've made a deal with, such as that last dwarf. I mean, someone possibly that I may have met that could explain any of this to me.
That is your first question, and my first answer will be no. I will not do this for you.
Okay. Secondly, I suppose, why have you spared me? I mean, you could have simply, with the power you possess, could have simply just forced them to do what you want. I don't know why you're using me as a bargaining chip.
That was not my decision to make. You see, Kalos, there are forces at work that are even greater than myself. And it was their desire that the pool of Ildreneth that lies to the east of where your physical body had perished, and the seal which holds... well, I don't believe I should tell you that part yet. A seal should be broken, and for that we needed a vessel, and you serve as that vessel.
Well, then, as a third question, and I hope you may be able to answer it, who or what is the voice that has been talking to me and giving me all this knowledge, the knowledge to be able to be here right now? It's a voice of, like, hundreds of thousands of whispers.
You see, Kalos, we have existed in the blink of an eye compared to some entities in existence. There are things beyond your comprehension that I could try to explain that you would not be able to retain the information of. So, instead, I'll tell you this. There are entities that exist that are much more powerful than any mortal can ever achieve in existence. And one of these entities is my master. And it is through its will that you exist in this incorporeal form of yours. I could restore your life immediately. I have the ability to do so. But it is the naivety of the fools that you have made connections with, and their potential that will allow us to move as planned. Now, I have answered your questions, and now you will leave. And he waves his arm, and the space disappears before you, and you die. And you wake up again in your in your space, and there's only one gateway.
And it's the one from before? Like the first one? Now, I'm gonna see how much time's passed. Like, on the outside.
And you look out. And as you do so, it is the start of a conversation between Sterark and a wood elf.
Oh.
And for the sake of brevity, because I know that you know, you lay witness to the entire conversation that Valsidroth and Sterark had. All of it. And as a result of this, you see a large part, as it flies past you, of Sterark's life. And his very, very, very long history. And the things that you are able to remember and retain is that Sterark doesn't remember a part of his past. For whatever reason. And it's filled with dragons. It's filled with bloodshed and war. Something that would break any man. But he is not broken. And you know that he cannot remember. You also know that he is not from this continent. He's from a different one. You know that he lived a life of heroism. And that at some point he crossed the ocean. You saw the point of his death. And the fact that he did die. You saw the attack of a giant purple worm destroying the home of him and his beloved. And the moment of his death, when the alchemical explosion happened in his wife's workshop. The explosion that you can see in his past that he believed was the origins of his undeath. But in fact, it was something else. Something that he doesn't know and you do not know. And as you continue to watch, you see both of the conversations. Well, you see one of the conversations, sorry, I'm getting my time all mixed up, between him and Kelemvor. But it's flying past you very quickly. Snapshots, slideshows of memories. And you can remember all of it. And should you desire, this is the last thing that I will ask you. Do you want to make a memory reel of Sterark's past?
Okay. And I think I'm gonna watch it.
So you
watch through it.
You create one and you watch it. And his past is beautiful, horrifying, and you know this man inside and out. The part that bewilders you the most happened 2,000 years ago. Sterark sits in a room with a man who's very, very handsome, with shocking blue hair, in a cave. Sterak is dressed in the armor that he wears now, but it's in the past, before he got it. And he holds on his waist a rapier, encrusted in golds and silvers, inlaid with sapphires. And as you continue to watch, you see a bloody, bloody war between dragons and the people that follow them. This is suddenly cut short as you watch for what feels like days. Until eventually, everything around you begins to shatter and shake and crack like an earthquake suddenly. Everything that you've created around you begins to rupture and break and melt. And you wake up. And you see Sterak, Luvash, Cornelius, Emery, Nervek. Several figures wearing white and green robes with pupilless eyes. You're standing in the center of a rose, in the center of a pool. And you hear the gentleman's voice, and you look out, and you see Sterak, and you say thank you. And that's where we're going to end this.